Right, so let's bring legal analysis on this to unpack today's proceedings and arguments by Dr. Nandipha Magudumana's legal representation in court. Elton Hart joins us for that discussion. A very good afternoon to you, Elton. Thanks for your time with us here on the SABC.
Afternoon, Liesl, and afternoon to the viewers.
Right, let's get into, what transpired today. Perhaps you can comment on as we wrap up. Nandipha's counsel arguing that her arrest in Tanzania was unlawful and questions the manner in which she was brought back to South Africa. What stood out for you in today's proceedings?
No, obviously for me, I always held the view that this was not a deportation per se, but it was a disguised deportation or a disguised extradition framed as a deportation. So for me, I said the gate is there when they arrested her and then handed her over to the High Commission, and then the High Commission hands her over to Mr. Matthews Modiri, as well as some SAPS members that they allege is spectators. Now that in itself, the Immigration Act is particularly specific to South Africa. They don't have any powers to detain or apprehend any person, be it illegal or a wanted person, a fugitive, in a foreign country. They don't have that authority. So there, I said the gate is there where the problem lies, that the unlawfulness of what they did is there. And today, the counsel for Nandipha specifically looked at that aspect to say, listen here, this was not a deportation, because a deportation is a one-sided, it's a unilateral act by one government to say, I'm sending whatever is prohibited or illegal in my country back to the country of origin or outside my borders. Here it was now a collision between two governments where they actually came to fetch, and before this ones could actually put her outside the border, we had already the South Africans there. So that for me, it seems that there was interplay. And the mere fact that we also had, and I don't think they mentioned it today, but we know that there was a guy from Interpol that was also on that plane from South Africa to Tanzania to bring them back. And it seems like they certainly developed amnesia, and they're not telling us about that. So for me, that was the telling point. But I think the advocate for Nandipha, he did very well. He zoomed into the issue, and the state, as well as the police, as well as Department of Home Affairs, they were 6s and 7s. They were contradicting each other, and that will count against them.
Elton, let me break down what you've said, just so that we're clear on the points. I wonder, just on the interplay point that you just mentioned now, with the Department of Home Affairs joining as a respondent in the matter and finding opposing papers, did they act within their jurisdiction? How will the abduction claims play out on that front from their point of view? Help us understand that.
Home Affairs doesn't have jurisdiction in a foreign country. Home Affairs jurisdiction is within the borders of South Africa. So for me, Home Affairs from the get-go were not supposed to be part of this application. The role they played, yes, they played a role because they paid for a third of the fees for the airplane to go and fetch them and bring them back. That was not their issue. That was not their scene. They were supposed to deal with them when they came back into the country to say, how did you leave South Africa? You violated our national movement system that they so eloquently referred to in their papers. Then deal with them. But they had no business about going to fetch Nandipha, and according to their papers, it was Tom's Bester Magagula, whoever that one was. So to bring them back here and actually now them standing trial. So Home Affairs was not supposed to be part of this. This is an issue that we needed to have the Department of International Relationships and Cooperation. They were supposed to be involved in this process because it's international relationships. And if it was a deportation, then we need to just have Tanzania here saying, I'm deporting you, I'm putting you on a point, a border post, and I'm putting you either on a ship, a car, a bus, or a plane outside my borders to South Africa. Wherever you end up, that's none of our business then after that. But here it was a concerted effort to make sure, and then we have the South African government already sending a delegation before the handover actually happened to go and speak about this, and Thabo Bester, Nandipha, to the Tanzanians. So that for me, that agreement then, it speaks to the definition, as the advocate also rightly so alluded to, extradition processes.
Thank you for that context, Elton. I want to now look at SAPS representation, who today said Dr. Nandipha Magudumana is omitting the context of why she was in Tanzania and that she was illegal in Tanzania when she was arrested. My question is, how important is this bit of information in this particular application?
For me, it's irrelevant. I can say it like that. It's irrelevant. SAPS is the South African Police Services. They are governed by the South African Police Service Act. Just as much as Nandipha was illegal in Tanzania, they did not have authority to be in Tanzania as well. They don't have jurisdiction into the Tanzania. So what did they go and do in Tanzania? SAPS. Mere spectators. Spectators of what? So for me, SAPS coming to say Nandipha is not coming with clean hands, their motives is also not clear. It's not clean. So SAPS should not hide behind that because they don't have jurisdiction. They cannot arrest, detain any person except within the borders of South Africa. So they need to also have taken the court into confidence and say, what were they doing in Tanzania? They said Thabo was armed and dangerous. Thabo, or the alleged Thabo Bester is armed and dangerous. That's alleged Thabo Bester. He was in the custody of the Tanzanians from around about 6-7 April. So surely if he was armed, they would have disarmed him because they won't let him go into a prison or a police station with a firearm. He would be armed. So it means that notion of armed, dangerous, he was in handcuffs, all those jazz. So their arguments, they trying to hide and shy away from the real issue to say that they did not have authority because it was clear. Hand over to the High Commission that Neo Teresa Moreng, who doesn't have jurisdiction to detain or apprehend people in any way. So that makes it unlawful. And then she hands them over to Matthews Modiri, who's a Home Affairs official, and according to the Immigration Act, he doesn't have that authority to do anything outside the borders of South Africa. Again, unlawful. Then the SAPS members was there to sort of make sure that the fugitive doesn't escape, or the or prohibited immigrants, as the Tanzanians would say, does not escape. So SAPS acting unlawful again. So 3 unlawfuls in one action, all together, just there in that motion. So for me, they've outdone themselves and actually messing up this whole process instead of just following the right channels.
Elton, early on you spoke about contradictory statements coming through. It seems that Dr. Magudumana's lawyers at this point are confident in the arguments. We saw some contradiction in the statements by both SAPS and the Department of Home Affairs regarding the matter. How would this impact on the case going forward? Will this give the judge enough time to think about, or what will it do for the judge rather in making the decision on the matter?
The fact that they are actually contradicting each other, it means that they're not taking the court in confidence. It means that there is certain information that they are withholding from the court that might adversely affect their case, and hence they don't want to tell it to court. So I think the judge will, in the back of his mind, think about that. And the mere fact that there's already precedent, and the advocate for Nandipha was clear that there's precedent, and it was by the appellate division. So he sort of zoned into the real issue here, and they was trying to make it rain for Nandipha, but instead it seems like DOH and the police legal representatives were dancing in the mud there because they were like sort of just trying to make as if they did the right things. Yes, on paper it looks like the Tanzanians covered themselves. We don't know if it was post facto or prior to whatever has happened, but the Tanzanians covered themselves and they threw the ball to the South Africans. And the South Africans, on their side, what they did going forward, they made it, and they made to
Elton, I'll have to leave the conversation there and interject. Thank you very much for your time with us in the SABC.